Previously, Cain was reincarnated into the another world, where he was born into a noble household of the kingdom, and at the age of 5, Cain went to the church for baptism. Their Cain consciousness was teleported to gods, and all of the 7 gods blessed him with overly powerful status, but when his father saw his stats, he then orders Cain to hide his power. Or else a war could be waged there against there. If you like the anime, please subscribe to our channel. As the story goes, Cain killed a red dragon and his level increased to 80 million, which was unheard of for a normal human. Then, at the age of 10, Cain and his family were traveling to the capital for Cain's debut ball in the noble society, when Cain sensed more than 30 orcs ganging up on a human party. So his father Graham, he sent his 2 men ahead to assist those humans, but Cain was concerned because of the number of orcs, so he ran ahead himself. As he arrived, many of the soldiers were already down by those orcs, and the last 2 men were barely holding on, so he assisted them by taking care of all of those orcs alone. As it turned out, the carriage those soldiers were guarding belonged to the house of Duke Santana, and riders in that carriage were the Princess Telestia and the dude's daughter Silk. Teles was still traumatized by the attack, so Cain used a relaxing spell to calm both of those girls. As the spell worked, they instantly took a liking to Cain and became fond of his heroic action to save them. Both Silk and Teles dragged Cain to travel with him in their carriage, and Graham was in complete shock, not knowing how to react. It had been a long journey to the capital, so they were about to spend the night at an inn, but they were getting too thirsty to even sleep with Cain. So Cain laid his terms that the room should be large enough to sleep a bit far away. And even though they found a room to Cain's liking, he still couldn't stop the girls from sleeping with him. It took about 5 days to arrive in the capital. Vice Captain of the Night Order formally thanks Cain for protecting Silk and Teles and also bringing back the fallen soldiers. Cain then requests that they be honored for fighting off 30 orc to protect the girls. The king then summoned Cain in front of all the nobles to pay him for saving Silk and Teles, so the king Rex gave Cain the title of Baron and a mansion for his heroic action, but as always, there's some ugly dude who's always opposed to the male lead but against king orders, like he can't even utter a word, so he backs off. But after that meeting, Rex summoned Graham and Cain in private to discuss the matter between Cain and Silk and Teles, and Rex and Duke Eric offered Cain the marriage of Silk and Teles. Because the king learned that Cain had already spent the night with both of the ladies, and if word got out, there would be no one to take them as their wives. So the prime minister came up with the idea of giving him the title and mansion. Cain couldn't accept it and looked to his father for help, but it was his mess, so he ignored it. Cain knew there was no way out of it, so he agreed to their proposal, and so they decided to hold their wedding when they reached a proper adulthood. Until then, their engagement was meant to be kept a secret. Cain was now all set for his new life with the 2 most beautiful girls. Then after that, Cain once again met the gods in heaven. They summoned him to discuss his level of power. So the god of creation gave Cain the position of the demigod and also warns him about his limits. Then Zenon wanted to bring some fun into this world, like some kind of game that Cain could bring from his world for fun. So he introduced the game of reverse, which all the gods instantly liked, but when he returned to the real world, Rain dragged Cain to a women's shop for his opinion. But Cain slipped by out of embarrassment, and outside the shop he met Parma, whom Cain met once when he was about 3. Parama was training under her uncle Tranmiz, who runs an antique shop, which gave Cain the idea and asked Tamanis to make that reversal game. But the issue was with the funding, which he got covered for, so Tamanis began working on it. While that was settled, Rain was in such a bad mood that Cain ditched her at that shop, but just a little bit of sweet word and Rain was melted. But she still made Cain look at every dressel as he bought. Then after some days, Tamanis called Cain to look at the first model of the game, and it was a perfect piece of work. So Cain asked to make 2 different kinds of this game, one for nobles and the other for commoners. Then came the time for Cain's debut ball in the noble society. At his party, that very same ugly Pace was there with his son and his follower, but Cain chose to ignore them and pay his attention to Silk and Duke Eric. They all behaved as if they had met the first time to hide Cain and Silk's relationship, but when Cain looked at Silk, he forgot everyone and complimented her like a real player. Which Duke couldn't believe that a 10-year-old could such a pro. Then, with the excuse of greeting the king, Cain got away from that, but he did the same with Teles as he flattered her like he did Silk, and Rex got his protective mode on like Eric. Then being away from them, Cain then met up Silk again in the hall and was having a pretty good time. But that ugly mug's son came to show off, and he also brought his follower to look down on Cain and impress Silk, but she gives him a cold shoulder. So then Cain introduced himself for modesty's sake, but they were just set to pick a fight with him. They took it outside and Silk was making them even more jealous. Then both of his followers tried to intimidate Cain with such a cartoon dance of magic. Silk was getting tired of their nuisance and tells them about Cain's identity and how he killed 30 orcs. Those three realized their place right away, and seeing those mugs, Silk wanted to tell this to Tellys, but Cain didn't want that. Silk agreed to keep this secret if he took her out on a date. Unfortunately, Tellys overheard the secret part and they had to tell her about their date plans. Tellys was cute when she got jealous, so Cain promised her a date as well, but to make matters even more funny, the king heard of their plan and took him to have a real man-to-man talk with the king and duke. So that concludes our anime recap. For more anime recaps, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon for more updates.